Producer Carthew Neal is nominated this year for his very first Oscar for producing Jojo Rabbit. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor here at Gold Derby. First of all, Carthew, congratulations on your nomination.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Sort of been reflecting on it the last few days since we found out, and amazing to be in a group of people and part of the history, I suppose, of the Academy and the Oscars, which is pretty special.
It's such a strong year for film. To have Jojo included in those films is pretty exciting. Take us through the morning of the nominations announcement, because you never really know whether you're going to be nominated or not. And how did you find out, and how did you feel?
I was in bed, and the phone was beeping and flashing and ringing, and that woke me up, and I quickly sort of figured out what was going on, and rushed over to Taika's house, our director and writer and star of the movie and producer also, and we spent the morning jumping up and down, celebrating, counting 6, 6, 6. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I can imagine it would have been super fun. Jojo is an interesting film because if you're reading about what it's about, you think, oh, that's different. But when you watch it, it's super funny and it's very charming and beautifully made. That was my reaction when I first saw it. What was your reaction when you first read the script?
Well, I've worked with Taika before, and so I know his body of work leading up to this, and so obviously it was audacious, the whole concept behind it, but I felt confident in Taika's ability to sort of ride that tone, and when I read it, it was just like, it was a beautiful, beautiful script, and really heartwarming and surprising, and took you places you never expected emotionally, and also had a really strong message that has unfortunately become more and more important as we've been making the film.
Yeah, you alluded to this. You've worked with Taika before, obviously, so you guys have a pretty good working relationship. You know how he works, and he kind of knows what you can bring to the table. Given he is such an interesting original filmmaker with such a singular vision, how do you interact with him on a day-to-day basis in your role to facilitate that vision? Well,
it's very... we try and make everything as fun as possible. Taika has a really good sense of humor and wants to. We want to have a good time while we're making the movie, and so some of the as New Zealanders, we don't necessarily always talk about the meaning or our feelings. What you're trying to get across as sort of verbosely as maybe other places, but. I think we know it, and we sort of nod and, at each other sometimes, but don't really talk too much about that aspect of it. It's more about how we're going to create, and for me, with him, it's how we're going to create an environment that he can flourish in, and an environment that can stay creative, be that with the other heads of department that we're working with, or with the cast through the whole process, and keep the creativity alive, like trying to avoid the feeling at any time, even on a smaller budget, that we have restrictions, and trying to feel like there's always options available, and the playground for creation is as big as possible within that.
Most people think they know what a producer does on a film, but what is the actual reality of the day-to-day mechanics of what a producer does to get a film made and finished?
I think it changes throughout the whole process, which is why I think a lot of producers like it, because no day is ever the same. But really, I feel like the job is sort of walking the path with the director, and going through that process and supporting them, encouraging them, protecting them at various stages, and trying to, just keep the vision, hold that vision with them through the process as they go a little bit more into the center of the fireball while it's being created. It can just be one sort of step back, just holding that space and remembering what the overall picture is, and making sure everything is ready and available for that as we come up to the different stages of production.
Yeah, and similarly, do you tend to interact a lot with the cast, or do you, like you just mentioned, do you still keep a one-step back type philosophy with them as well? How much do you interact with the cast?
Well, I interact in a way of, I think, everything, trying to create an environment that feels good for the cast. I mean, I'm not giving definitely am not giving the cast direction. That's all Taika's business, but definitely trying to give them all of the backstory, all of the information that we've been gathering up as we've been making the film, so that they're ready for the time when they're with Taika, and then he does, works his magic, and he with them. And I think that's one of his skills, is his ability to create a sense of freedom for the cast, so that they can go places they never thought were possible.
Yeah, and your cast is obviously, there's quite a lot of younger actors in it, like your last film, Wilder People. Does that pose any particular challenges, relatively speaking, to a cast that doesn't necessarily have younger actors?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the biggest challenges for Jojo Rabbit was finding our Jojo, because he's in almost every scene apart from the 2 scenes with Elsa and Rosie in the cubbyhole. And so finding a kid who had that range and also the stamina to be able to hold that whole film was, a massive, massive challenge. And, behind that, we chose Roman. We found Roman 4 weeks out from shooting. So, that was, a nerve-wracking time in the production. But we were able to fall back on the fact that Taika is very good with children. And again, for him, it's about creating an environment where the children never feels like work for the children. It feels like they're very playful, and the best of them can come out without it becoming too hard.
Yeah. So you've got the general challenges that you would have on set. You're trying to facilitate Taika's vision. You've got the cast, you've got the crew. There's a whole bunch of things happening. At the same time, on a more macro level, did you find the film particularly challenging to produce, perhaps even financially, because of the film's subject matter, or did that really never really come up?
Well, Taika first heard about the book that the film was based on, Caging Skies, by Christine Lunens in 2010, and wrote the scripts in the following year, and without looking for financing, and wasn't able to put the financing together at that point. And so he went off and made 3 other films. He's a very productive and energetic guy. So, and then came back to Jojo. It was discussed again when Searchlight got in touch, because it was a much loved script. It was on the blacklist, and Searchlight got in touch in 2017, and I think everyone had loved the script but weren't sure quite how to do it. And I think the timing, things were changing in the world a little bit. It became a little bit more necessary. It felt necessary to kind of have a reminder of peace and a reminder of what happens when we go to war. And that's where the journey began again, and the whole project reignited with that, and with a challenge to Taika, saying, would he play Adolf, the imaginary version of Adolf Hitler? And obviously he is not your immediate thought when you think of a character like that. But in that challenge, I think it sort of set the tone for the film, and the fact that this was actually not Adolf Hitler. This was an imaginary version of Adolf Hitler, and a 10-year-old's version. So the imaginary Adolf could only know as much as a 10-year-old could know.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually the genius of the film for me personally. Like Taika playing Adolf Hitler, or the imaginary version of Adolf Hitler, I just totally and utterly fell for that and thought that really, really worked. But when I was watching the film for the first time, I was imagining what you guys. Were you ever worried that this was not going to work, and you weren't going to stick the landing, and people were going to be really disgusted or kind of horrified that you were doing something like this? Because it's still risky to do it, don't you think?
It is, yeah. But I think the thing is, the script was so good, and you read the script, you knew what the film was about, and the message was very clear. And then I think and that script was what brought on all of our cast and brought on our HODs, because it was so poetic and had such a strong kind of punch to it too. And so we all just had to kind of believe in each other and take that leap of faith together. And of course, there were moments that were nerve-wracking, but it was the Taika's vision and the script that kind of, pulled everyone together. And it wasn't hard getting the cast on board because of those things. And so we were really banding together and taking a risk. But I think in taking that risk, we knew that we could solve problems. And that's something I definitely feel like with working with Taika and our other collaborators, is that when you're together as a group, you can solve any problem, and that's a really great feeling as a producer, to be in a team where everyone's supporting each other like that.
And given your other experiences on film sets to date, would you say that Taika's collaborativeness, or if even that's a word, or his congeniality, is that what he brings to a project that's unique, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think there's lots of directors who are collaborative, so that's just one of the things he brings. But I think what I think he has a confidence in the spontaneity in the moment of what can happen in the moment, and so that's what I was sort of mentioning about the play pit that we sort of put together, and then but allowing room for things to happen. And I think that comes from his background in theatre and performing arts and being in comedy troupes where things can happen in a moment and they can be brilliant. And so you do your fair share of planning, but then you also allow room for magic to appear in those moments. So I think that's something very special that Taika has. And then I think, he doesn't ever let it go. He's always searching to make the best film possible. And I think because he made 4 films in New Zealand before coming across to the States, it's given him a confidence in his ability to solve problems and to be confident in his own voice. And I think all of the projects that he's done up until this have led to Jojo Rabbit and his ability to take on such a heavy subject matter.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between filmmakers and cast and crew from places like New Zealand and Australia and even parts of Europe, where they have worked in a smaller industry, but they've become quite resilient and resourceful. They go to the States, and the industry over there are really quite amazed at how adept they are at various challenges. Do you find that has really helped in your career to date, working in a smaller environment in New Zealand, and now perhaps maybe up to a larger industry?
Yeah, I think you sort of have confidence that you just can solve problems. I think that's, you've been through that, and you've probably done more parts of the job than maybe people who have just worked in America, where sometimes it can be quite narrow because you've got so many more people to help you. And so that means that you have an understanding. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone comes at filmmaking from a different path. And so I'm not saying that people in the States haven't come through that path, because there's obviously an independent industry in America as well. But I do think that independent start means that you really know what blocks you need to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Now, final question is kind of going back to the beginning of this interview. You've been on a bit of a journey now in this awards season, is what we call it, especially in LA. And it's going to end in a week or so at the Oscars. How has that been for you? Has it been surreal? Have you enjoyed it? Are you kind of looking forward to it to being over, or do you want it to last longer? Like, how's it going? Because it is quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of time talking about the film, but I mean, what is so exciting about that is that we're starting to meet people who have seen the film several times and have fallen in love with the film, or we've heard stories about parents who have taken their children, or children who have taken their parents, and start to think about the message, and the message that, one, they found the film more emotional than they expected, and 2, that they thought about the film afterwards. And that's really rewarding, and that's why, that's what fuels us to keep going and to keep talking about the film, because it's really exciting when we get a sense that the audience are really enjoying that, and it's creating a discussion, which I think is, without us ever wanting to really say that too much, being New Zealanders, is our intention.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the bottom line. It is a very timely film, and I hope everyone who's watching this interview has had a chance to see it. If not, go out and watch it. And Carthew, thanks for your time today, and good luck at the Oscars. We hope to see you on the red carpet having a really good time.
Great, thanks a lot.
Everybody go to goldderby.com right now, make your predictions for Jojo Rabbit, click subscribe to watch all of our chats with contenders just like Carthew.